Gravity and Benjamin Franklin Silver Award winning, and Edgar Seamus Agatha Anthony Scribe USA Best Book Award, and Forward Indies Book of the Year nominated author of 20 or more probably now books, both nonfiction and fiction. So he has several thriller series in print, including the Samantha Cody, Dub Walker, Jake Longley, and Kane Harper thriller series, and the Royal Pains media tie-in novels. Dr. Lyle's short stories and essays feature in many anthologies, and in fact, today is the launch day for Nothing Good Happens After Midnight, which is edited by Jeffrey Deaver, whom of course you all know, and it features a story, Tonic, by Dr. Lyle. Doug is, his short story Bottom Line also appears in one of my favorite anthologies, the Sherlock Holmes inspired one called For the Sake of the Game. In addition to this impressive output, Dr. Lyle is a practicing cardiologist now in Southern California, and he's also written many books on forensics, including this one, which I'm going to try. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh heck. Okay, there we go. Including this one, which is a forensics, a guide for writers, and he's also won an award for Forensics for Dummies, which is a great book. Anyway, he consults regularly with writers, which I find in combination with all of these other things. And in fact, you have 2 books out this year, 2 new books in your series, right?
That's correct. One in each series, and then the short story. Yeah.
So how prolific you are is astonishing to me. Last month we had as a guest Anthony Johnson, who was talking about his book, The Organized Writer. And I think this has to just describe you, because I don't know how you can do this. So my first question is, you know, when you say ask a busy man, you're a doctor with a cardiologist, you're an author, and you also generously, and I've been the beneficiary of this, consult with writers on their thrillers. So how do you divide your time, and how do you corral your own writing time?
Well, I corral it by making it free range. I don't have a set schedule. I refuse. That's like a job, and I refuse this to be a job. I've had a job for 50 years. You know, it's I don't want another one. I write when I feel like it, and when I don't, I don't. Like this morning, I had great aspirations to get a lot of writing done, but I ended up doing a ton of promotion for the short story anthology because, well, today's release day. But I'll be back to it tomorrow. I try to write a book in each series every year, so every 6 months I have to finish a book. Fortunately, I don't need much editing. Once it's written, it's written, you know, and I go back through it a couple of times, have a couple of readers that read it that always find stupid typos, but by the time I send it off to the publisher, I get very few edits back. But I guess after 21, 20, whatever it is, you better know how to do this.
Right. Yes. I think that's definitely true. I mean, it's a question of experience, but still that's very prolific. Two thrillers a year, but while working full time, and again, giving your time to other people. So when you say you only write when you feel like it, but you sort of have something in your head in terms of a deadline, if you're really trying to get 2 done a year, right?
Kinda. I mean, you know, I know that, you know, I got to do this. Like the next Jake book, which will be number 5, it's already done, edited, everything, and in the pipeline. It'll be out next fall. I'd started it, and I was about 20,000 words into it when all this pandemic idiocy came along, and we got shut down. So we closed the office for about 3 weeks. So, you know, what am I going to do? So I finished the novel. I finished the novel in about 4 weeks, and right. And then did a couple of run-throughs again, sent it off, and they said, great, good to go. And so it's in the pipeline. And now I'm working on the next Kane Harper book. So I'm going to try to finish it by the end of the year.
So what is a typical writing session to you? Do you write to time? Do you write to word count, or you just write till you're tired of writing it that day?
Yeah, just until I'm tired of writing. And I do use a little Hemingway trick. I will start the next chapter, even if I'm not ready to write it, but I'll write 3 or 4 sentences at least. Sometimes it'll be a page, But then I
Right.
know when I stop, when I come back, Hemingway would sometimes stop in the middle of a sentence
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he knew he had a running start,
Yeah.
you know.
It's like going to the edge of the diving board and jumping a few times.
Exactly. You're good to go. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I do that too. Do other people do that? I can't see you. Some of you are visible. No, Jared doesn't do that. Okay. Well, it's interesting how I'm always very interested, Doug, in how people who are so prolific manage their time and manage their energy.
Mhm.
Before everybody came on, we were just chatting, and you said that one of your secrets is you don't need a lot of sleep.
No, I never have. 5 hours is plenty. It's been that way my whole life, much to my parents' chagrin, because, I was 5 years old and I was up at 4. Of course,
Yeah.
Dad didn't get up to go to his work until like 6. So I had 2 hours to terrorize the neighborhood before anybody got up.
Right.
And I growing up in the South, you had to put on a pair of shorts, no shirt, no shoes, get my bicycle and I'm gone, and around the neighborhood. Um, so I just always did that. I always get up early. I wake up early. I stay up late. It's just, at the end of the day, I hate to sleep. I
Yeah.
really hate to sleep. I think
I
it's a
actually
waste of
do.
time.
I do that too. I don't like to go to bed. Yeah.
No.
So now you've been a cardiologist for many, many years, and I've seen you've held various offices. You've been president of various associations and so forth. So how would you say, or is there a way to describe a parallel between being a doctor and being a writer of mysteries? Because Arthur Conan Doyle wrote in The Speckled Band, when a doctor does go wrong, he's the first of criminals. He has nerve and he has knowledge. So that's
Exactly.
so how does that relate? How does your knowledge and your mindset as a doctor affect
Well,
your
actually,
thriller
it's a
writing?
double-edged sword. I mean, on the negative side, we're trained to think logically, linearly, and if A is then B and then C and then D, and you always look for side roads and stuff. But everything has to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, you got to explain why it doesn't make sense. So in other words, medicine has to be as clean and as linear as you can possibly make it to get to the right answer and do the right thing to resolve the problem. And in cardiology, that's often seconds and minutes that you have to make those decisions. Writing is messy. Fiction writing is messy. It doesn't follow all those rules. And so when a lot of, and I was the same way, when a lot of physicians start out writing, or scientists in any field, they're so restricted by making everything perfect and knowing that everything has to fit perfectly and there can be no gaps, you end up tying yourself in knots and you end up having a stale, stodgy, slow, stupid story. Okay. And in fiction writing, you got to get out of the way. You got to let the horses run. You got to let things go where they go. Along that same line, the last the last 7 books I've written, I did an outline. In
You
fact, I
did
didn't
not
even know
outline,
I
but
did not. I did not even know where the story was going.
so you
I had a
pants
few
the
scenes in mind. I just started writing.
so you
Yeah.
pants the last
Yeah,
7. Now,
exactly.
but before that, had you been outlining before that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially the nonfiction stuff. But even the fiction, I would outline because I was afraid to paint outside the lines,
That's
and,
interesting. Now,
and
do you find that the quality of your writing has improved as you've felt
absolutely.
more loose?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's the
Absolutely.
artistry that has come to the fore. I mean, you still put all the logic and all the facts in, because also just in your description right then of what the doctor goes through, it's like it has
Hmm.
to be drawn from a massive amount of knowledge. You can't just start
Right.
with an empty,
No.
you have to. So like Holmes, for example, I mean, he's filled the brain attic with a lot of facts and he draws on them. So it's not like he's operating free, like that. But so your experience then as a writer has given you this ability to pants as
Sure.
a
Sure.
mystery writer, as a thriller writer.
Sure.
So when well, let me ask you this. I once worked on I did a spec script for House, and House
Hmm.
was a classic mix of mystery, thriller, and medical. and it had a very like many mysteries, it had a very strong structural element. I understand you consulted on House, right?
A couple of episodes, yes.
Yeah, with Matt. Was it with Matt?
Matt was
Yeah.
was one, yes.
Yeah. So, because House was a doctor character based on Sherlock Holmes, and the structure of that story was, you know, there would be a bizarre disease that was presented, a bizarre occurrence, and then it had to be mistakenly diagnosed two or three, I can't remember, two or three times, and then the final one was diagnosed. And House had to get it wrong, but he's Sherlock Holmes, so it had to be really carefully done. And so I remember that was possibly the hardest thing I've ever written. And I first had to find all the medical facts, medical factoids, and then
Exactly.
so I worked with a neurologist on that. I picked a neurology-based illness. Anyway, so when you work on your mysteries, do you find you use your medical vast knowledge frequently as a kind of starting place, or is it just something you throw in occasionally, or is it, how important to you is it in your structuring of stories?
Well, it obviously depends on the series. With the Jake Longley series, it's much more happenstance and almost slapstick because they're comedic thrillers. There's a lot of banter back and forth, you know, between Jake and Nicole, kind of like Hepburn and Tracy. There's that kind of dynamic going on. There is a mystery, there is a crime, there is bad guys, there are people murdered, there are all that negative stuff, but it's done with a light hand and it's done with fun in mind. The Kane Harper series, and like Dub Walker and Sam before, they're much more dark thrillers. They're much more in your face. So yes, everything that you learn and everything you bring to the table helps you tell a better story. First of all, you got to be able to tell a story, you know, and I grew up in the South, so we tell stories. But then you have to have a fund of knowledge. And so I do have the medical knowledge and scientific background, but I also educated myself in forensic science and police procedures and all that. So all of that stuff's there to choose from. And if I need to look something specific up, I know where to go, or I know who to ask, you know, and over the years, you just develop those relationships. And so, yeah, all that stuff's important. You asked earlier, like medicine and the medicine, I always compare writing a novel to having a very sick patient in a VA hospital. You know, there's 5 organ systems that are trying to fail at the same time, and you're in an ICU, and you got to keep all those balls in the air. And if you drop one of them, things don't work out well. And so it is a real gymnastics problem. You got to really pay attention to everything. Writing a novel is the same way. You have a lot of balls to keep in the air. You got plot, you got pacing, you got dialogue, you got all those components that I tell people, don't pay too much attention to that. Just write the story. All those things will happen automatically if you tell a good yarn. But they're all there, and you do have to balance them.
Yeah, so mystery writers and thriller writers some some people seem to be better at some aspects of this than others. In you know, and there's also, of course, different flavors of thriller and mystery writing. But sounds like you know, from your series, you've gone for several different kinds of tones or types of series. So do you have a favorite among the things you write or the things you like to read? Do you have a favorite genre, subgenre?
Well, it's almost always under that big umbrella of crime fiction, but I like well-written crime fiction. To me, the 2 greatest American authors ever are James Lee Burke and Elmore Leonard, and they're both absolute master classes in writing and telling stories and all, and they are so different. They couldn't be more diametrically opposed. James Lee Burke is flowery and poetic and breathtaking at times. The word pictures that he paints and the characters, it's just phenomenal. And Elmore Leonard is in your face. You know, it's just this happens, and you better get on the train because it's going to happen fast.
And it's funny too.
And you learn so much from both of them. And so I've read everything each of them have written. I've met both of them and talked with them about writing. And I mean, to me, they're the icons. I wish Elmore was still around.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, my husband is a scientist, a computer scientist, and he got into science by reading science fiction as a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
he once got to meet Heinlein and spend an afternoon with him
Uh,
similarly, and he was so inspired to become a scientist based on this work. So it's interesting how, things that sometimes people dismiss as, kind
right,
of fun literature. It's not really literature, it's
right.
fun stuff, is actually life-changing for people.
Yeah, I started with science fiction. I mean, the first real novel, other than, boy wins football game and gets girl, what we'd call YA now, but those were the books back then. They were stupid. But the first real novel I ever read was Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I read it in Jules Verne, I just went insane. I said, this is incredible. So I read all the Verne I could get my hands on. And then I went to the Pellucidar series by Edgar Rice Burroughs and read all of that. And then moved on into Asimov and Heinlein and,
Yeah.
Philip K. Dick and all those people and read all that stuff. But then I started reading crime fiction and that kind of fell away. And I don't read science fiction anymore because I find it tedious sometimes.
Hmm.
It's too much explanation.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yes.
You got
Okay.
a world build. Yeah.
Yes, you do have to world build. And
Yeah.
whereas
Yeah.
with crime fiction, although in historical crime fiction, you kind of have to world build, or you
Right.
have to remind or present without doing the research dump thing.
But at least everybody's got 2 eyes, a nose, and 5 fingers,
Yes, this
on
is
each hand. So, you
yeah,
have
exactly.
a frame of reference. Exactly.
Right, exactly. So looking in your forensics book here, just one of the things that you start out with a little bit of history of forensics,
Mhm.
which I think is neat.
Right.
And, we all think of, of course, we think historically in fiction, we think of Poe and then we think of Sherlock Holmes and so forth.
Mhm.
But then there's this real life French guy, Locard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Locard exchange principle, do you mind
Yes.
talking about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, that is the basic premise of forensic science, the sine qua non, as they say. Without that, nothing. If you don't have the Locard exchange principle operating, there is no evidence. And basically, what it means is if two people, a person and a place, or a person and an object, come into contact with one another, there is an exchange of material. So that means if you own a cat or a dog, this, because you can remember, you're going out somewhere and you look and you got cat hair all over your sweater. That's the Locard principle at work, because you're going to drop that cat hair wherever you go. If you go into a crime scene and you cut yourself, you're going to leave blood behind. If you commit a rape, you might leave semen behind. You might leave fingerprints and shoe prints and tire tracks and all these things behind. Well, you're also going to take stuff away. You may take away the victim's blood. You may take away hair and fiber from the victim. So that exchange takes place, and then finding that evidence and connecting it is what makes forensic science work. Without it, without the Locard principle, you've got nothing.
And so in your book and also in other things I've read, the 19th century was sort of the birth and the initial categorization of these things, and then the
Sure.
20th century really took it to the next level, and it's continuing apparently. I read
Right.
something on your website about the hair follicles. That's a new thing now. Can you tell about that, like the latest that
well, I mean, the hair itself can tell us so much. First of all, I can give you a timeline of a lot of drug exposures. It can also tell you about dietary stuff now. It can tell you even about location, because there's different diets and different intakes in different parts of the world. And that's just from the shaft. There's hair coloring, there's chemical treatments, all of those. If you find a hair and you can go back and say, well, this wife, she got her hair done at this salon all the time, and they use this product, and this product was found on that blonde hair that was, at the murder site, well, you got a connection. Does it mean anything? We don't know. That's what the investigation's all about. But if you get the follicle, it's a different story. Now you got DNA. And now you can do all the DNA typing and all the DNA matching and all those things that you read about and see on TV all the time now.
But the hair would have to be pulled out to get the follicle.
Exactly. The follicle has to come out with it.
But I understand that But now they can start to get some of that DNA in the shaft, right? I mean, that's the
Well,
new
they can
thing.
get mitochondrial DNA, which will
Yeah,
give you
some of it,
will
right?
give you the mother's lineage up the line.
So
Um,
partial
yeah.
match kind of thing.
Well, it narrows it down to one line. So if we find your mitochondrial DNA, well, we're also going to see your sisters, your mother, your grandmother, your great grandmother, et cetera, back 6,500 years is going to have the same mitochondrial DNA. So
Right.
what it does is you got 5 suspects, well, only one of them, the
That's bad.
mitochondrial DNA, you get rid of the others.
Eliminate, yeah, eliminate the others. So we have several questions that have been coming in from the listeners. James Pearson says he's asked you a number of questions over the years for his own writing. You've always been very helpful. Thank you for that. And he says you always have a warning that your advice, such as what poisons to use, is only for writing.
Yeah.
So the question he asks now is, have you ever been worried by anyone who's approached you for advice, perhaps that they're actually looking to bump someone off?
Over the last 20 years, maybe twice, and they were just quirky and goofy and all that. And I didn't think the worst of them, but I just thought, and I get questions from people, and you can tell by the wording and the syntax and the word choice and the language that they're asking about a real life situation. And I
Asking for a
always say,
friend?
I don't get involved in real life situations. I only deal with fiction. So tell me more about your story, and then
Right.
I'll be able to answer your question better. I never hear back from them.
Yeah,
I've
right.
had 2 women from prison send me letters and want me to help them get out of jail. One of them was, this is the God's honest truth, that she did not beat that woman to death with a hammer. She had to hit her 30 times in order to save her own life. And she had diagrams of the crime. She had drawn all this stuff in prison and written it in block lettering. I never responded, of course.
Yeah.
And then the famous London bank robbery, where they burrowed in through the bottom floor and spent the whole week doing that stuff over a holiday or something and took off with all that. When those guys got caught, they had a copy of Forensics for Dummies in their office there where they were living. And then one of the police officers from over there in London sent me a note, said, I thought you'd like to see this and hear about it. I said, that's great. I said, but version 2 just came out. Maybe they should have waited for that one.
That's pretty funny. Oh my God. Now, okay, another question is Amanda asks, she says her fascination with poisons started with Agatha Christie, and does yours come from your medical knowledge or literary interest? How did you get interested in poisons?
Well, actually both. Poisons are a great way to kill because you don't have to be there.
Right.
And you don't have to get blood on your hands, and they can happen much, much, much later. Dave Barry was telling this story. He and Ridley Pearson, who writes great thrillers, are very, very dear friends. And Dave said they were in Sun Valley or something. They were standing in line at a coffee shop, and Ridley's watching the girl grind the coffee over there in the coffee machine. And Dave said, what is it? You're thinking of something. He said, do you know, if you put cyanide on the blades and they ground the coffee, the cyanide would be in the coffee at the bottom of the bag. It may be weeks before they get to that part of it. And he said, so, you're scot-free. And he said, good Lord. But that's how crime writers think,
Yeah.
And, but arsenic has been around for thousands of years, and it works. It still works today because it masks gastrointestinal and neurologic diseases, and nobody ever thinks arsenic.
Right.
You just don't test for it. And you think, well, they got, early Parkinson's, or they got a neuropathy, or they got, an ulcer, or they got, chronic indigestion, they got, the H. pylori, they got something that's making them feel bad.
Something benign.
And because in medicine, common things occur commonly, and arsenic's not common.
Yeah,
so
it's zebra.
It still works today.
Yeah. So Paul Gitcham, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, asks if there's one common forensics mistake. Did I do that right, Paul? Anyway, there's one common forensics mistake that you wish writers would stop making. What is it?
Well, you know, on TV I watch and these guys go break into these places and they don't wear gloves, and it's like, didn't your mother teach you anything? You
Right.
know, yeah, it's just simple
Yeah.
things like that.
Couldn't watch television.
Yeah, but I get the thing I see the most in books and stuff, and it's lazy writing and it's convenience, and that's what I call the one punch knockout. You're not going to knock somebody out with one punch. Number one, I mean, it's rare. It's rare. Look at boxers who are trained to do this. They almost never knock anybody out with one punch. Usually it's the fifth round. The guy's worn out and he walks into one, something like that. But your little PI, you know, who drinks lattes and eats tofu is not going to knock somebody out, not with a fist, maybe with a 2x4. And then when the person's unconscious, it's like they're written out of the script. Like they're going to be unconscious for the rest of the world, the rest of time memoriam. No, they're going to be unconscious for seconds to a couple of minutes. Then they're going to be goofy and groggy for a few minutes, and then they're going to be angry. Guess what? And they're going to come after you. So if you have someone knock your character out, and then you put them in the trunk of the car and drive for 2 hours and open the trunk and throw water on them, you know, to wake them up, pump the brakes, because that is not going to happen. They're going to already be awake. They're going to be awake by the time you get the trunk lid closed, and they're going to be raising hell. So common sense, common sense.
So I wanted to encourage other people to put questions in the chat if you have some. Please put them in. So I consulted with you recently on I had a situation in which I wanted to have somebody burn up to a crisp in a container kind of thing.
Right.
And what I really wanted, just because it was such a weird visual, is I wanted their fingerprints to burn onto the surface. And then you told me that just couldn't happen.
That wouldn't happen.
And I was like, damn, because I wanted that visual, you know, I really wanted that. It just sounded so cool. But I had to go with another thing. But you made me go back to the drawing board, and I appreciate that, because I did come up with something I'm very happy with. But you know,
good.
Yes. Anyway, so it was extremely helpful. So we've been talking to Doug here about his working methods and a little bit about how he got into this. I guess so. Have you ever do you start sometimes in terms of a storytelling sense with what you want to have happen and then work backwards?
Not really. I kind of have an idea for who the good guys and the bad guys are, and kind of how the story's going to end. But I just know the good guys are going to win, the bad guys are going to lose. But I don't know exactly what the final confrontation is going to look like. And like I said, I always outline. And what I found is I would spend a month outlining, and I would get like 50, 60 plot points, I call them. That's all I did was one-liner, plot points. This. And then I'd write the story. Well, I found I got bored with the story by that time. It's kind of like, now I got to write this thing? Jesus, I'm already done with it. You know, I don't want to do this. So when I came to the Jake series, I had a vague idea who Jake was going to be. I knew it was going to be comedic. I always wanted to write comedy. I knew it was going to be lighthearted. I knew he was going to be an ex-pro baseball player, and he was going to be a slacker. I mean, I knew that. But that's all I knew. I didn't really know what he looked like. I didn't really know his relationships. I didn't really know the crime that was going to be involved. But I had a scene in mind. And so I sat down and I wrote that scene. You know, I said, just shut up and write the scene, quit worrying about it, see what happens. And then the next scene, and the next scene, and the next scene, and the next scene. I didn't have a title. I didn't have anything for this. I didn't even know who the bad guys were. I didn't know how they were going to interface with Jake. But as it started writing, it just all unfolded, and this fell into place, and that fell into place. And then it just comes from organic storytelling. Everybody knows how to tell a story. And I think most writers wind themselves in knots trying to make things perfect. Don't. Just go with it. Write it. You can fix it later.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you, Doug. You know, I was at one of the mystery writing conferences, and somebody asked Katrina McPherson whether she pantsed or plotted, and
Right.
she said pantsed. And it's been my experience at those conferences that when people are asked that question, almost all the good ones pants.
And I think it's right. And
don't-
then, you know, there's not a clear division because you
you
are
do go back,
outlining in
yeah.
your head,
Yes,
but you haven't outlined the whole story. You've outlined the next 5 or 6 scenes.
exactly. You don't outline you do go back
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
plot. You have to step back and plot. So I've done a couple of NaNoWriMos. I've had to stop and go back and plot and then, you know, and then carry forward.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
but it's
Exactly.
still, but you have to allow people to walk onto the page that you didn't know were going to walk on there.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the story to go where it feels like it should go. I use a program called Scrivener, and
Yeah.
it's fantastic. It's the
Yeah.
greatest thing ever invented. It's $40, and it's made by the people at Literature and Latte, it's called. But if you just Google
Right.
Scrivener, if you don't use it, I highly recommend it. It's not one of these programs that tells you what to write or how to write or all that stuff. It's a great organizational tool.
You know, our
And
last
you
guest,
can jump from chapter to chapter to scene, bang, 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 instantly. It's all right in front of you. And that's what I use.
Yep, and our last guest said exactly the same thing, and it is a wonderful. It is a wonderful. Two British guys did it, which means that the manual for it is hilarious.
Right. Oh yeah, exactly.
It was so.
But you know, like I'll be writing, and so I'll say, okay, oh, this is a great scene. Yeah, this is what should happen. But if this happens, then this, and this. So I will go make those little scenes and write one little sentence in the little box there. Right. So now I've really outlined the next 4 or 5 chapters, at least 4 or 5 scenes anyway. So yeah.
And the other nice thing about it is it will dump in all your good research and keep
absolutely. It's phenomenal.
Nice. Yeah. So any more? Oh, we got a couple more questions, and Luke, I know you want to move on. So let's see. Oh yeah. So Paul's waiting for Windows 3. So James Pearson says he's interested in controversies over forensics, something rarely dealt with in fiction, where CSI makes out that it's all easy and uncontroversial. So what is the most dubious method that's out there being used, and what is the most promising? Do you have any way in on that?
Well, you have to understand very few things in forensic science have been scientifically tested by the correct method. Okay. But you know, most of the things we do in medicine are not done that way either. You know, it's called off-label use. 90% of what we do is not on the label because you just know it works. Bite marks, you know, they've fallen into great disrepair, if you will. But that said, if you get a bite mark that is so unusual, like Ted Bundy, and you match it to his teeth, boy, what are the odds that anybody else on the planet who, well, happened to be in Tallahassee, Florida at that time, you know, would leave that pattern of bite mark? Well, nobody. So it's very strong evidence, things like that. But has the whole field of bite marks been tested scientifically? No, because it's probably hard to get volunteers for that. And this is true of most things. As of this point in time, no 2 people have ever been found to have the same fingerprint. Now, they can be misinterpreted, but no 2 people have the same fingerprint, not even identical twins. And one of the most interesting things is that for years, we said identical twins have the same DNA. Well, they have the same DNA profile. So if you do a DNA profile and you do the short tandem repeats, STRs, yeah, they're going to match perfectly because of that. But if you go to the others, the SNPs, the single nucleotide polymorphism, what you find is that in the devil's in the details, in those strands of DNA, some of the transcription process where the DNA divided and rebuilt itself wasn't perfect. And there's differences. And so consequently now using SNPs, we can distinguish identical twins from each other. Okay.
Right.
There's also something in the blood called antibody profiles. We all have different antibodies in our bodies because you interface with different viruses and different bacteria and different things, different toxins than even your spouse or children or next door neighbor would. And so consequently, your antibody immune profile, if you will, is yours specifically. This is in the future. So these things are starting to fall out. It's the field is amazing, but a lot of it is controversial now. You know, some rightly so, some not so rightly so.
I got one more question for you, and I know Luke wants to move on. Jared asks, Jared says he once identified a dead body for the police. and he had he had gassed himself, and he had a plastic bag. He looked like a drowned snarling rat. This is quite evocative. So he's since read that corpses do not die with expressions on their face. Do you agree or disagree?
That's 99.999% true.
That they
Why
don't?
is that? Because that they do not. Because when you die,
Yeah.
everything relaxes, all your muscles relax, your facial expressions, you don't have a look of horror, well, except two circumstances. One is strychnine. Strychnine is a drug that causes the muscles to all contract and freeze. Complex physiology, but it works. And it's what they call the risus sardonicus, the death grin. The mouth is stretched back, the face is stretched back, the body is arched back in what we call opisthotomus, where your heels and your head are touching the floor, but the body's arched up off of it. And sometimes at death, they can freeze in that position with all of that. And it's what's called instant rigor mortis, so to speak. So if the death is so violent and so quick that rigor mortis sets in instantly, then yes. It's interesting, people who are running and they've used up all their ATP and they get shot in the head and die instantly, sometimes their legs, the rigor mortis sets in within minutes, where the rest of the body, it may take the full 12-hour cycle to get to full rigor, because they've consumed the ATP to ADP process, which you can read about in the forensics books, the physiology of how that works. But you can have instant rigor mortis, So cadaveric spasm, they used to call it.
Wow. Yeah. Right.
Well, yeah, it's never easy, is it?
Yeah, so fascinating. We're all, we all have this sort of gory sensibility being crime writers, right? We all want to know this stuff. This has been super fascinating, and Doug, thank you so much. This is just
thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Yeah. Anybody last questions? Let's see. I see anyone. Paul just says, surely that means SNPS may vary across one person depending on if a mutation occurred in the stem line. That's a little technical. I don't know what that means.
I mean, that's true, and it does change. And interesting enough, it may change within the same person. If you check their profile now and then you do it again in 10 years, all these little SNPs have changed, and their DNA profile won't match their old DNA profile if you get down that deep in the weeds in the testing it. But SNPs basically test every base. DNA is just made up of a string of bases, like beads, and each one of those bases is a bead. Well, if they don't get transcribed right, they change. And so consequently, your DNA taken when you were 10 years old versus when you were 20 years old may have these minor variations. Now, in the scheme of things, as far as the DNA profiling we do, there's no change. But this could be. And so, if he's got a twin brother, and how are you going to use this stuff? How do you know? We don't know yet.
I've discovered one more question that was hidden. Amanda Lees asks, Doug, how many people have asked you how to commit the perfect murder, and what do you normally say?
Actually, I talk about this in a lot of my lectures because I do get asked that a lot. What's the perfect murder? Okay, and here it is. A sniper. Someone you do not know. You never tell anyone. You get lucky and there are no witnesses. You destroy the weapon completely afterwards and never, ever, ever, ever open your mouth about it. It has to be a stranger with no connection to you. It has to be done from a long way away. And if you get the shot off and nobody sees you and you drive away and some citizen hadn't walked by and said, well, I heard a pop and I saw this car driving away, then you're toast, because they'll find you. But if you can snap off the shot and disappear and destroy the gun, you've left one piece of evidence, and that's the bullet. And it is of no value unless you have the gun to match it to. So that's, if you had to do one, that's it. You had to do one.
I really liked your blades of the coffee grinder one though.
Yeah. That's pretty. That was Ridley Pearson. That's pretty clever too. I like that. And and you can hide poisons and stuff that they won't get to for weeks or months. And if you have access to their house, but that
long gone.
Yeah.
This is great. Oh, lovely. Okay, well, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Oh,
much, Doug.
anytime, you know that.
This has been
Anytime.
really a thrill to have you here. Such a pleasure. So everybody should have Doug's books on forensics, which
It's there somewhere.
why is this not working? Oh well,
I don't
somebody else hold it up, Jared.
Well,
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know, what is the deal with this? I don't understand this. Maybe I just turn this off.
Well, actually, that's part of a 3-part series originally from Writer's Digest, but now I think Penguin's doing it. There's that one on forensics. There's one on poisons by Sarita Stevens, and there's one on police procedures by Lee Laughlin. And those 3 books, every crime writer should have, because it gives you 90% of the research you need to do.
Yeah, this is excellent. It's absolutely wonderful. And just reading it gives you ideas. I mean, it really does. It's fantastic. Yes. It's really, thank you. Thank you so much, Doug. And really.
Some friends of mine, I don't know if you guys ever attended the virtual Noir at the Bar that was run by Simon and Vic over the summer, and it was a massive hit and got a lot of us through lockdown. It was just a heck of a lot of fun. Well, basically, they're with us tonight because they're going to chat to us briefly about their new venture, which is called Bay Tales. So they launched Bay Tales at the start of November. It's a brand new venture for the team. And they're also responsible for the short story collection called Noir from the Bar, which is a fantastic book of 30 new crime and mystery stories. Simon is a 25-year vet in the publishing industry and is a marketing consultant, and Vic is an award-winning writer and professional proofreader and copy editor. In my opinion, both of them are absolute legends. With Bay Tales, they're looking to bring audiences the best in fiction, whether you're a reader or an author. There's going to be a bit for both. So they have big plans in the pipeline for both online and offline. And they're starting off with what they know best, which is virtual events, which I believe are going to kick off in the new year. So Vic and Simon, I don't know which one of you're both going to chat, but my first question is, tell us a little bit more about Bay. I just kind of bumbled out all that stuff, but tell us a bit more about Bay Tales and plans and how folks here can get involved.
Okay. Do you want me to kick off, Vic? Or?
Go on. Yeah.
Go on. Yeah. So the distant background really is Vic has been running the Newcastle branch of Noir at the Bar. See, I'm jumping on her toes already. I moved back to the Northeast just before lockdown started and managed to get to one of the physical events. And then everything went, it wasn't me personally, I don't think. But, and we looked to take that online and recreate that Noir at the Bar atmosphere, as Luke says, with 10 authors, reading 10 extracts. By the time we got to the end of the summer and we'd been running sessions every week, firstly, we decided to take a break because we'd originally thought it was only going to be a 3 or 4 week lockdown. How long could these things last? Well, by the time we got to show number 22 and doing a couple of specials in between, we said we're going to have to take a little break from this because it was all voluntary and so on. So what we're doing with Bay Tales really is trying to open that up a little bit to offer more opportunities. And it basically comes down to 2 things. The website, www.baytales.com, which has some free stuff on there, and it has a Hall of Fame of authors, author profiles, with links to their works and so on. And then there's a premium side of the site, which is at the moment £25 a year. And for that, we're pledging to put at least 1 new piece of fiction or non-fiction up every week by established and upcoming writers. So your very own Mr. Luke has got a short story up there. And for any author that does have a piece of work that's put on the site, they get their own profile on the site, which they can tailor to whatever they want it to be, that we'll design for them. They get the work up there, they get the promotion that we do. They also get a year's free membership of that site. So we're building up a community as well. So within the premium area, you get fiction, you get non-fiction. We're partnering with a number of groups that are writing and reading specific and more general. So working with alcohol companies, non-alcohol companies, food companies, and members will get discounts on all of those things. And then we also have the online community there where writers and readers can get together to talk about anything they want, really, in what we're hoping is a fairly relaxed and unstructured, just free for all, where people can chat. So that's what I'd say, Vic. I don't know what you'd add.
Yeah, we've been really lucky. So in addition to the stuff that we've got already on the website, we do have quite a few things waiting to be uploaded, like Simon says, every Wednesday. We do also have the lovely Anne Cleves, who has been very kind to us in offering a post-lockdown lunch with myself and Anne to one of our lucky members. So Simon, I'm right in saying you just have to be a member, don't you, to be entered into that competition? There's no kind of prerequisites or anything.
Yeah. There's no competition element to it. Yeah. All you have to do is be a member. Yeah.
And we probably won't draw it until we kind of know when we can do it. So hopefully it won't be too far in the future, but maybe, who knows. Anyway, so we've got lunch with Anne Cleves to give away to somebody. We also have, we just launched, I think it was yesterday, but who knows, a Christmas short story competition. So as Simon says, we've been running Virtual Noir at the Bar for much of this year. We're having a Christmas special on the 16th of December, and we've got lots of fantastic authors booked for then. We also have space for the winner of our Christmas short story competition, which is available to subscribers of our website only. But it's basically a unique piece of crime writing with a Christmas theme or set at Christmas, something like that, that can be read in 7 minutes. The winner will then read alongside our other guests at Virtual Noir at the Bar on the 16th of December. And we do also have some prizes to give away as well to people who will place second and third. So there's like a real nice mix of, if you want to read things, if you want to read fiction or non-fiction, if you want to be involved in the writing side of things, or even if you want to meet other writers and readers. We're just hoping to recreate the community we managed to build with Virtual Noir at the Bar over the summer.
And I think just to add to that, Vic, the other nice thing for the writers is that we do have a panel of 5 published authors who've agreed to read the entries. And we've committed that everyone that does enter will get some feedback on their story. So, you know, I've seen competitions, I'm sure we all have, where there will be an entry fee for entering competitions. Well, but we're not doing that. We're saying you pay your special, you know, you pay your £25 for 12 months of membership. You get all of this good stuff, the fiction, the non-fiction, and we'll throw as many of these competitions in and extras in that we're not really advertising, that we'll just put up there as we come to it. And the idea really is just to try and cover the costs of putting these things on, because, you know, we ran Virtual Noir at the Bar for 22 weeks. Any donations that we got went to the NHS. So, you know, it was completely a not-for-profit enterprise. But as you guys will know, running your own Zoom events and so on, the marketing and the so on that we put behind it, you know, does cost. So when we get to the new year and we can start looking initially at virtual online events, we've got some amazing authors that are going to be taking part. But hopefully as we move on a little bit and get out of this whole horrible thing, to start looking at some writers' weekends and you know, physical events, because we're not making this a regional thing, but we have got a lovely region up here in the northeast, and we're both from the coast, so hence partly why Bay Tales came out of it. But there are some amazing venues up here and so on, that, and as Vic says, with authors like Anne Cleves and so on, you know, there's a lot of crime history up here as well. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or they'd like to ask anything or anything. Otherwise, thank you very much.
There is a comment from Sam in the chat, and she asks if you can send a press release or info to writing.ie They have lots of traffic from writers and would love to connect.
Absolutely.
And there's
We've
email
got a press.
address in there.
We have got a press release ready, so I'll get that across to you. Sam, I don't know, we are on Twitter, so if I just pop that in underscore
Simon's
Tales.
on digital.
And we'll email address, and I'll send you a press release across for that tomorrow.
Cool. Any other questions from anyone?
I just really want to say again, we may be working with big names, as you've seen on Virtual Noir at the Bar, people like Anne, but we are also really keen in helping people who are up and coming, who are newly published, who are yet to be published. And we have got some really great virtual, as Simon says, initially, events coming up in January. And we are just hoping to try and recreate. We've actually been shortlisted with Virtual Noir at the Bar for a future book award through the bookseller. We did our presentation yesterday and we're waiting for the results on Friday. So again, we are just hoping to recreate the success we've had with that and really get the crime writing and reading community pulled together in what is a very, very strange time.
I mean, one thing that we were able to do with Virtual Noir at the Bar that we didn't publicize in any way, so I'm kind of telling you this within the closed group, but we had a number of unpublished authors read at VNAP-B, as we say, and once we'd had our reputation established, we actually invited, I think it was about 12 or 14 publishers in the end who turned up. We did a closed session where 6 of those unpublished authors got the chance to read the pitch and read a sample from the book, and we know of at least 1, potentially 2 or 3 of those who've since been taken on by one of those publishers. So we're hoping to get that sort of thing carrying on and working through Bay Tales as well. So
yeah, definitely.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Awesome. I think the work you guys did with Virtual Noir at the Bar was terrific. You gave a lot of people an opportunity to get out there and get in front of people, and it's a very welcoming community. So I don't have any doubt that Bay Tales will follow well in the footsteps of that. So that's awesome, guys. Thank you for coming and chatting to us about that as well. You're welcome back anytime to come and let us know about what's going on with Bay Tales.
It was a brilliant, fascinating talk, and I'm just thinking about rewriting a couple of chapters now as a result of it.
There you go.
So thank you very much for having us. It's fascinating.
Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome.